Emily sat at her small kitchen table, staring at the envelope in her hands. The paper felt heavier than it should, and the golden lettering shimmered faintly in the morning sunlight. She had not expected this. The words were clear, an invitation to the wedding of Daniel Parker. Her heart skipped a beat and her fingers trembled slightly. Daniel, her childhood friend, the boy she had grown up next door to, the one who had shared secrets with her under the old oak tree, the one whose laughter had always made her chest feel light. And now, years later, he was getting married. Emily's eyes wandered to the tiny kitchen around her, the familiar smell of toast and coffee filling the air. She lived alone now in a small apartment in the city. Her life was simple. She worked at a bookstore, loved quiet mornings, and enjoyed painting in her free time. She was used to routine and the comfort of small things. She liked her life this way, but sometimes she could not help feeling invisible. She was petite, shy, and often overlooked. People seldom remembered her presence until she spoke, and even then her words were brushed aside as soft and small. She sighed and placed the envelope on the table. Her mind raced. Daniel had returned to town only a few months ago, and everyone had been talking about him. He had traveled the world, started his own business, and somehow in every story she heard he had grown taller, stronger, and more confident. Emily had always been small in comparison, not just in size but in spirit, she sometimes thought. Standing next to Daniel had always made her feel tiny, like her very self did not quite measure up. Her fingers traced the edges of the invitation as memories washed over her. She remembered the summer when they had both been 10 years old. They had built a treehouse together in her backyard, crafting it from old planks and nails that had rusted in her father's shed. Daniel had laughed when the floor creaked and threatened to collapse, and Emily had laughed too, though her heart had thumped wildly. She had felt something then, though she did not understand it. She had loved him in that quiet, secret way that children sometimes do. And now, years later, the thought that he might be marrying someone else made her chest ache. She had never forgotten him. Though life had moved forward and people had come and gone, Daniel had lingered in her mind like a gentle echo. She had wondered often what he had become, imagining him in distant cities, succeeding, thriving, perhaps even thinking of her occasionally. The envelope in front of her was a jolt, a sudden pull back into a world she had left behind. Emily knew she had a choice. She could ignore the invitation, pretend she had never seen it, and continue her quiet, safe life. Or she could go and face a room full of people she had not seen in years and the man who had always mattered most to her. She felt a swirl of fear and excitement. She thought of her friends who had always encouraged her to take chances, to step outside her comfort zone. With a deep breath, she made her decision. She would go. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Emily stared into her small bedroom mirror, trying to decide what to wear. She had always been careful about her appearance, preferring simple clothes that did not draw attention. She was not vain, but she had learned early that she was often judged for her size, her soft voice, her delicate frame. She felt exposed as she tried on dress after dress. Nothing seemed right. Too plain, too bright, too attention-seeking. Finally, she chose a modest blue dress that hugged her frame just enough without feeling overwhelming. It was simple, elegant, and to her eyes, perfect. On the day of the wedding, Emily felt a nervous flutter in her stomach as she rode the bus to the venue. She watched the city pass by in slow motion, noticing the way the sunlight fell on buildings, the way leaves rustled in the breeze, the distant laughter of children playing in a park. Her mind, however, kept returning to Daniel. She imagined him standing at the altar, tall and confident, smiling at the woman he would soon wed. She felt a pang of jealousy she could not name, mixed with anticipation. When she arrived, the wedding hall was breathtaking. White flowers lined the aisles and golden ribbons shimmered in the soft light. Guests in elegant attire chatted and laughed, their voices filling the large room with warmth. Emily took a deep breath, smoothing her dress with trembling hands. She felt out of place, small among the tall women in heels and flowing gowns. She reminded herself that she had come here for a reason. She had to see him, had to face this moment, and she would not shrink back. Emily's eyes scanned the crowd, searching for him, and then she saw him. Daniel. He had grown into the man she had always imagined, tall, broad-shouldered, exuding confidence and calm. His hair was neatly combed, and his eyes, sharp and bright, seemed to take in everything at once. He laughed at a joke someone whispered in his ear, his smile wide and genuine. Emily's heart beat faster. He looked different, more mature, more certain, yet somehow the same boy she had known. She remembered the rumors she had heard about his fiancée, a woman from a wealthy family who seemed perfect in every way. Emily felt a twinge of doubt. Would he really notice her? Would he even remember the small, quiet girl who had been his childhood companion? She took a steadying breath and reminded herself that she was here, present, alive, and that was enough. She would face whatever came. As the ceremony began, Emily found a seat near the front, though not too close. She watched as the officiant welcomed everyone, and she felt her palms grow sweaty. The bride entered, elegant and composed, gliding down the aisle on the arm of her father. Emily's eyes were drawn to Daniel, who stood tall at the altar, waiting, his expression calm yet distant. And yet as she watched him, she felt a strange connection, a pull she could not explain. Their eyes met briefly across the room, and for a moment Emily felt time stop. The familiar warmth of recognition filled her chest. Daniel's gaze lingered, and a small, almost imperceptible smile played at the corner of his lips. Emily's mind raced, memories of childhood, shared laughter, and secret smiles flooding back. She realized then that despite the years, despite the distance, some bonds did not fade. Some connections remained, waiting for the right moment to rekindle. Emily's heart was a mixture of hope and fear. She did not know what the future held, or what this moment might lead to, but she felt alive in a way she had not felt for years. She was small, quiet, and often overlooked, but here in this golden hall she felt seen. The thought gave her courage even as the ceremony moved forward. She would watch, she would wait, and she would let whatever happened happen. Emily felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as she settled into her seat. The music had changed, soft and gentle, creating an almost magical atmosphere in the hall. She tried to calm her racing heart, but every sound, every movement, seemed to draw her attention to Daniel. He stood at the altar, speaking quietly with the officiant, his eyes occasionally scanning the crowd. Emily noticed how confident he seemed, how naturally he commanded attention. She could not help but compare herself to the other women around her, tall, elegant, and perfectly dressed. A small pang of doubt crept into her heart. She was small, quiet, and often overlooked. Would Daniel even notice her now? Her thoughts wandered back to the times they had spent together as children. She remembered long summer days in the sun, running barefoot through fields, Daniel's laughter echoing behind her. She remembered the late-night talks under the stars, sharing secrets that no one else knew. Those memories warmed her heart, but they also reminded her of how much time had passed. Life had moved forward for both of them, and she was not sure if she still had a place in his world. As she watched, she noticed some familiar faces among the guests. Old classmates, neighbors, and family friends whispered and smiled at one another, catching up on years of life. Emily realized how much had changed. People had grown taller, matured, and developed lives of their own. Yet some things remained the same. The gentle rustle of laughter, the nervous shifting in seats, and the warm glow of reunion all felt familiar. Emily felt a strange mix of comfort and anxiety. She was both a part of this world and a stranger within it. Daniel's fiancée finally appeared at the end of the aisle, her dress flowing elegantly behind her. She was beautiful, poised, and clearly confident. Emily felt a pang of insecurity. She wondered what Daniel saw in her, what qualities made him choose her all those years ago, and if she could ever compete with the perfection in front of him. But even as the doubts pressed against her heart, she could not take her eyes off Daniel. He looked different now, more mature, more composed, but there was something in his expression that made Emily's heart flutter. It was as if he carried memories with him, memories that included her. The ceremony began in earnest. Guests watched attentively as vows were exchanged, smiles and tears appearing in equal measure. Emily found herself holding her breath at certain moments, her emotions tied tightly to each gesture and word. She felt as if she were witnessing something delicate and fragile, something that could shatter or shine depending on the next moment. Every glance between Daniel and the bride felt like a puzzle she was not invited to solve. She noticed the subtle tension in Daniel's posture, a slight hesitation that made her heart skip. She wondered if he was happy, truly happy, or if some part of him still remembered what had been. Emily's thoughts were interrupted by a small incident. A guest seated nearby accidentally dropped a glass, shattering it on the floor. The sudden noise startled her and she flinched. Daniel's head turned slightly, scanning the room to ensure everyone was all right. In that brief moment, their eyes met across the hall. Emily felt a jolt, a spark of recognition that ran through her chest. She saw a flicker of surprise, perhaps even relief, in Daniel's gaze. For a second, it felt as though the world had shrunk to just the two of them. The ceremony continued, and Emily noticed something she had not expected. Daniel's attention seemed to shift slightly, not in the obvious way one might expect, but in subtle gestures, a slight lean, a softening of the eyes. The way his smile lingered just a moment longer when he glanced toward her. Emily felt her pulse quicken. Could he really be noticing her? After all these years? Her heart whispered a cautious hope, one she dared not fully embrace but could not ignore. As the bride recited her vows, Emily observed Daniel's expressions carefully. He listened politely, nodding at the right moments, but his eyes occasionally flicked toward Emily. She caught herself holding her breath each time, hoping she had not imagined it. The warmth of childhood memories mixed with the tension of the present moment made Emily feel both young and grown up at the same time. She felt her smallness, her quietness, yet she also felt an unfamiliar strength rising within her. She was here, she had come, and she mattered enough to be noticed, even if only for a fleeting moment. Emily's mind wandered to the what-ifs. What if he no longer remembered her? What if he had changed so much that the bond they once shared no longer existed? And yet, every glance, every subtle gesture told her that something remained, a thread connecting their past to the present. She thought about the treehouse they had built, the secrets shared under the stars, the laughter that had once filled the air. Those moments had been small, quiet, and invisible to the world, yet they had been monumental to her heart. And perhaps she thought Daniel had remembered them too. The ceremony moved toward the part everyone had been waiting for, the exchange of rings. Emily's hands tightened in her lap as she watched Daniel take the ring from the officiant. He held it carefully, turning it over in his fingers, his expression thoughtful. Emily felt a strange mix of anticipation and fear. She did not know what he was thinking, but she felt a sense of something shifting in the air, something invisible but powerful. She had come to witness a wedding, but she felt she was witnessing more than that. A moment that could change everything. A small incident caught Emily off guard. The bride's dress snagged slightly on the carpet, and she paused for a moment, adjusting it gracefully. Daniel's eyes flicked to her, but then returned to Emily's gaze. In that brief moment, Emily felt a connection that was entirely theirs, a silent acknowledgement that the past and present were intertwining in a way she had not expected. She felt warmth spreading through her chest, a mixture of fear, hope, and excitement. Emily's mind wandered back to her insecurities, the doubts that had haunted her for years. She had always worried that she was too small, too quiet, too ordinary. Yet in this moment she felt seen. Daniel's gaze had reached her, piercing through the crowd, carrying something unspoken but deeply familiar. She realized that her smallness, her quiet nature, and her simplicity had not diminished her. It had made her recognizable, memorable, and important to him. The final moments of the ceremony approached. The officiant spoke words that felt ceremonial, distant, almost like background music to the storm of emotions inside Emily. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, every beat echoing the hope she had long buried. And then she saw it, a small, almost imperceptible movement from Daniel. His lips curved into a faint, knowing smile, and he leaned slightly as if to whisper. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She felt a jolt of recognition and anticipation. She did not hear the words yet, but the intent, the familiarity was unmistakable. The ceremony paused briefly, and Emily realized that something had shifted. The world had not changed, but her perception had. She was no longer just an observer. She was part of the story, part of the moment that was unfolding. Her heart swelled with a mixture of fear and hope, excitement and uncertainty. She did not know what would happen next, but she knew that this moment, this glance, this presence of Daniel, had changed everything for her. Emily sat back slightly, taking a deep breath. She reminded herself that she had come here for a reason. She had stepped out of her comfort zone, faced her insecurities, and allowed herself to hope. The hall around her, filled with music, laughter, and the soft murmur of guests, felt both vast and intimate. She was small, yes, but in this moment she felt alive. And perhaps that was enough. As the ceremony continued, Emily's mind wandered between the past and the present, between memories and possibilities. She thought about the small moments that had defined her relationship with Daniel, the quiet understanding they had shared, and the unspoken bond that had persisted despite years and distance. And she realized that something profound was unfolding, something that might alter the course of their lives. She did not know how or why, but she could feel it. The soft music of the ceremony filled the hall as Emily's heart beat faster than she had ever known. Every small movement seemed magnified, every whisper, every glance carrying weight. She tried to focus on the vows being exchanged, but her eyes kept drifting to Daniel. He stood tall, shoulders squared, his expression calm yet reflective, like someone who had traveled far in life but had never forgotten where he came from. Emily felt a strange mix of awe and anxiety, unsure how to reconcile the confident man before her with the boy she had grown up beside. The bride moved gracefully, her dress flowing like a river of white and gold. She seemed poised, perfect, and entirely in control of the moment. Emily could not help noticing the contrast between herself and this woman. She was small, quiet, unassuming, while the bride radiated elegance and confidence. A pang of doubt gripped her heart. Was Daniel truly happy here? Was this the woman he had imagined marrying all these years? Emily shook her head slightly, trying to push these thoughts away. She had come here not to question, but to witness, to be present, to see what would unfold. Emily's attention was caught by subtle details. Daniel's hands trembled ever so slightly as he held the wedding band. His eyes flicked from the bride to the officiant, and then, for a brief moment, they swept across the room. And then it happened. Their eyes met. Emily felt a jolt that went through her chest and reached every corner of her being. In that single glance, years of distance, silence, and longing seemed to vanish. Daniel's gaze lingered on her just a moment longer than it should, softening in a way that made her heart flutter uncontrollably. She tried to look away, to remind herself to be calm, but her eyes kept returning to him. The memories came flooding back. The treehouse they had built together, the shared secrets whispered under the stars, the laughter that had always been uniquely theirs. It struck her suddenly how much of herself she had put aside over the years, how she had convinced herself that being small and quiet made her invisible. But now Daniel's eyes told a different story. They said that smallness could be seen, quietness could be heard, and presence could matter no matter the years gone by. The ceremony continued, but Emily felt as if the world had narrowed around her. Everything else faded. The murmurs of the guests, the rustling of dresses, the soft hum of music. All that remained was Daniel. She could see the faint crease of thought on his forehead, the slight tightening of his jaw, the way his eyes softened when they met hers again. Something unspoken passed between them, a silent communication that seemed to carry the weight of years, of unacknowledged feelings, of what might have been. Emily's mind raced with questions she dared not speak aloud. Why was he looking at her this way? Did he remember the childhood they had shared? Did he still feel the same warmth she had always felt from him? Her heart told her one thing. That glance had meaning, and it was meant for her. But her mind whispered doubt, cautioning her against hope, reminding her that life had moved on, that he was about to marry someone else, that maybe she had imagined it all. Then, the unexpected happened. Daniel leaned slightly toward her, his lips parting as if to speak. Emily's breath caught, her pulse racing. For a fleeting second, the world seemed to hold its breath with her. She could not hear his words, but the intent in his expression was unmistakable. It was personal, private, intimate in a way that sent shivers down her spine. Her small frame felt like it had grown, stretched by the force of this moment, as if she had become larger, more important, simply because he had noticed her. The bride continued her vows, unaware of the silent storm brewing between Emily and Daniel. She spoke of love, commitment, and partnership, her voice steady and confident. Emily listened, but her mind was elsewhere, caught in the magnetic pull of Daniel's presence. She could see his slight hesitation, the brief tightening of his hands, the way his gaze kept returning to her despite the ceremony demanding his attention. Emily felt a rush of hope and fear, excitement and anxiety. She was not sure what would happen next, but she knew that everything had shifted. Emily remembered a small incident from years ago that now seemed oddly significant. Daniel had always noticed small things about her. The way she tilted her head when curious, the subtle gestures she made when she was nervous. the quiet laugh that had always been unique to her. And now, in this grand hall filled with people, he seemed to notice those things again, even across the distance. It made Emily feel seen in a way she had never imagined possible. She was small, she was quiet, but here, she mattered. As the moment of exchanging rings approached, Emily's heart raced even faster. Daniel took the ring carefully from the officiant, his fingers brushing against the metal. He held it for a long moment, looking at it with a mixture of concentration and something deeper, something that Emily could not name. And then he glanced toward her again. Their eyes locked, and he leaned slightly closer, his lips moving in a whisper she could not hear. Emily felt her breath catch, her chest tightening. Something had been said, something meant only for her, though she could not yet understand the words. Emily's mind filled with anticipation. She wondered if he would act on whatever he was feeling. She thought of the years apart, the memories that lingered, and the quiet bond that had never truly broken. Her heart whispered possibilities that her mind feared to acknowledge. Could it be that Daniel had never forgotten her? Could it be that he had returned not just to marry, but because he had realized something important, that she had always been the one he cared about most? The bride stepped forward, adjusting her dress, and Emily felt a pang of tension. She watched as Daniel's eyes followed her movements for a brief moment, and then almost imperceptibly they returned to Emily. That tiny, almost invisible shift filled Emily with a mix of fear and hope. She could feel the electricity in the air, a quiet, powerful force that made every second stretch and every heartbeat loud in her ears. She felt as if time had slowed, waiting for something monumental to occur. Then it happened. Daniel's hand shook slightly as he held the ring, and he turned, just enough for Emily to see. He whispered something. Emily could not hear the words clearly, but she felt them, understood them in a way that transcended sound. Her breath caught. Her heart leapt. The words carried a weight she could not explain, a force that made the world seem simultaneously terrifying and thrilling. In that moment, everything she had felt, feared, and hoped for coalesced into a single point of awareness. Daniel had noticed her, truly noticed her after all these years. Emily felt a rush of memories, a cascade of emotions washing over her. She thought of her childhood, their shared laughter, the quiet moments that had defined their friendship, the longings she had hidden even from herself. And she realized something profound. Her smallness, her quietness, her simplicity had never been a limitation. It had been part of what made her uniquely visible to Daniel, part of what made their connection enduring. She felt a strength she had never known, rooted in the knowledge that she mattered, that she had always mattered. The ceremony seemed to stretch endlessly, each word, each gesture imbued with heightened meaning. Emily's gaze remained fixed on Daniel, tracing every subtle movement, every expression that hinted at what he truly felt. The bride continued her part of the vows, but Emily's attention was elsewhere. She understood now that something monumental was happening, something that could alter the course of both their lives. The atmosphere was charged, a quiet tension building that was palpable even to the other guests. Emily's pulse raced as the officiant guided the ceremony toward its conclusion. She felt the energy in the room shift, a subtle but undeniable change. The world outside the hall seemed to vanish. Everything had narrowed to a point of focus, centered entirely on the man she had always cared for, and the invisible thread that connected them, unbroken by time, distance, or circumstance. She realized that the next moments would define everything. Her smallness, her quiet nature, and the years of waiting had all led to this single, pivotal instant. Daniel's hand moved, his expression softening in a way that made Emily's heart ache with anticipation. He leaned slightly, and this time his whisper was clearer, though still inaudible to others. Emily felt the meaning of the words penetrate her being. It was a promise, a recognition, and a declaration all at once. She felt her chest swell, tears threatening to spill, and a smile breaking across her face despite her nervousness. In that moment, Emily understood that life had a strange way of bringing people back together, of highlighting what truly mattered. She was small, quiet, and often overlooked. Yet here she was, noticed by the one person who had always mattered most. The weight of years of uncertainty, longing, and hidden affection lifted slightly, replaced by the exhilarating, terrifying possibility of something new and extraordinary. The soft murmur of the guests seemed to fade into the background as Daniel's eyes remained locked on Emily's. The hall, with all its flowers, Ribbons and golden light felt smaller somehow, as if it existed only for the two of them. Emily's heart raced, a mix of excitement and fear twisting in her chest. She had come here expecting to witness a wedding, but now she realized she was on the brink of witnessing something entirely unexpected, something that could change everything. Daniel's expression shifted slightly, a deep thought crossing his face. His jaw tightened and his hands, which had been steady moments before, now trembled just a little as he held the ring. The bride, standing with her bouquet of white roses, seemed unaware of the storm brewing in the small space between Emily and Daniel. Emily's pulse quickened. She could feel the tension radiating from him, a subtle shift in energy that told her something monumental was about to happen. Emily's mind raced, torn between disbelief and hope. She had never imagined that Daniel would notice her like this, not after all the years apart. She had convinced herself that she had grown into a quiet observer, someone small and often overlooked, a ghost in the background of other people's lives. Yet here he was looking at her with a mix of recognition and longing, and Emily realized that her quiet, unassuming presence had always mattered more than she had known. A hush fell over the hall as the officiant prompted Daniel to speak. The guest leaned forward, eager to hear the vows, unaware of the turmoil inside him. Daniel took a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing on him. Then unexpectedly he stepped forward, his gaze unwavering as it found Emily's again. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips and he spoke, not to the bride but to everyone present. "I cannot do this," he said, his voice steady but carrying an undeniable gravity. Gasps spread through the hall like wildfire. Emily's eyes widened, her heart leaping into her throat. The bride's face changed instantly, from serene confidence to shock and confusion. Whispers erupted among the guests, questions and speculation filling the room. Emily felt frozen, unsure whether to move, speak, or simply breathe. Daniel's voice grew firmer, more resolute. "I cannot marry someone else because I have realized something I should have known a long time ago." He paused, scanning the crowd for a moment, before his eyes found Emily once more. "I have loved someone all my life, someone who has been with me in ways no one else could, someone I have never forgotten." His words were calm, clear, and full of certainty. Emily's chest swelled with a mixture of joy and disbelief. Could this really be happening? Could he truly mean her? The bride stepped back, her composure faltering. She opened her mouth, perhaps to protest, but Daniel held up a hand, stopping her with quiet authority. The guests, sensing the tension, fell into stunned silence. Emily felt all eyes on them, yet she only noticed Daniel. His gaze was full of emotion, an intensity that made her feel both exposed and cherished. She felt the years of hidden longing, of quiet admiration and secret affection finally recognized. Emily's mind flashed back to their childhood. She remembered the small moments that had shaped their bond, the shared laughter, the secret jokes, the times when Daniel had noticed her in ways no one else did. Those memories now felt alive, not distant shadows of the past. She realized that all along her presence had mattered to him, even if she had never fully understood it. And now, in this charged, breathtaking moment, he was making it clear. Daniel took a step toward her, his hand extended slightly, as if inviting her into a world she had only dared to dream of. Emily felt a rush of warmth and fear at the same time. The guests murmured, whispers of shock and curiosity filling the air, but she felt detached from it all. The hall, the flowers, the music, they all seemed to fade away, leaving only the undeniable connection between them. She had always known in some quiet part of her heart that they were linked. But now the recognition was mutual, undeniable, and immediate. Her thoughts swirled. She had come here unsure, hesitant, afraid of being too small, too quiet, too invisible. Yet Daniel had seen her, not just as a shadow of the past, not just as a childhood friend, but as the person he had loved all along. She felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of joy, of a love finally acknowledged. Emily realized that her life had led her to this exact moment, to be present, to be seen, to be chosen. Daniel spoke again, his voice steady, carrying through the hushed hall. "Emily, I have always known, even when I was far away, that you were the one who mattered most. No one else has ever understood me like you have. No one else has ever mattered to me like you do." Emily felt her heart swell to a size it had never known. She had waited for these words, though she had not dared to hope they would come at a moment like this. In a hall filled with strangers and whispered judgments, the bride, now fully aware of the situation, took a step back, her eyes wide with shock. Daniel's decision was final. There was no hesitation, no doubt. He turned fully toward Emily, his hand still extended, his eyes shining with a mix of certainty and vulnerability. Emily felt herself rise almost instinctively toward him. She took a step forward, then another, until she stood before him, trembling but steady. The distance between them disappeared, replaced by a warmth that felt like home. When their hands finally met, Emily felt a jolt of electricity, a deep connection that went beyond words. Daniel held her hands carefully, reverently, as if he were handling something precious, and she was. In that instant, all the years of longing, of fear, of smallness seemed to vanish. She realized that being small had never been a limitation. It had been part of what made her irreplaceable in his eyes. The guests, now fully aware of the dramatic turn, whispered and murmured. Some looked shocked, others fascinated, and a few smiled knowingly, recognizing the authenticity of what was unfolding. Emily felt a strange detachment from the crowd, as if she were in a bubble with Daniel, the world outside irrelevant. All that mattered was the man before her, the one who had always held a place in her heart, now standing with her, acknowledging her presence, her worth, and her importance in his life. Daniel's lips curved into a soft, reassuring smile. "I know this is sudden, and I know it may seem impossible, but I cannot marry anyone else. Emily, you are the one I have always loved. You have always been the one who fits perfectly in my heart, and I cannot imagine my life without you." Emily felt tears spill over, hot and fast, but they were tears of pure, uncontainable joy. She laughed softly, a sound that was half relief, half disbelief. She could hardly believe this was happening. After all these years, all the waiting and uncertainty, it was finally real. The officiant paused, unsure of how to proceed with the unexpected development. Guests shifted in their seats, some murmuring in confusion, but Emily hardly noticed. Her eyes were locked on Daniel, and she could feel the sincerity in every word, every gesture, every glance. It was as if time had slowed, the hall shrinking until only the two of them existed in this perfect, impossible moment. Emily swallowed hard, her voice trembling slightly. "Daniel, she began, but he shook his head gently, silencing her with a look that conveyed both understanding and reassurance. "No need for words," he whispered softly, "just for her. We will figure everything out. Right now, just know that I see you. I have always seen you, and I choose you." The weight of those words settled over Emily like a warm blanket. She felt a rush of emotions, relief, joy, disbelief, love, and gratitude, all intertwining into a sensation so profound that it left her breathless. She realized that all the smallness she had ever felt, all the quietness she had hidden behind, all the doubt she had carried, none of it mattered anymore. She had been seen, recognized, and chosen. Daniel stepped closer, closing the final distance between them. Emily felt herself lean slightly into him, a small but significant motion, a silent acknowledgement of everything they had shared and everything they were about to share. The crowd around them was a blur, irrelevant compared to the intensity of the moment. All that mattered was that they had found each other, that the past had led them to this point, and that the future was now theirs to shape together. In that moment, Emily understood something she had never fully realized. Love was not about appearances, size, or societal expectations. It was about recognition, connection, and timing. Daniel had always known, even if he had not admitted it, that she was the one who fit perfectly into his life. And now, standing before him, feeling the warmth of his hands and the certainty in his eyes, Emily knew that she had finally come home. Emily could hardly believe what had just happened. The wedding hall, once filled with polite murmurs and music, now seemed quiet, as if the world itself had paused to watch this unexpected turn. She stood before Daniel, her small hands in his larger ones, feeling warmth radiating from him, a comfort she had not realized she needed until now. The whispers and shocked expressions of the guests faded into the background, irrelevant compared to the intensity of the moment. All that mattered was Daniel and the undeniable connection that had finally, after all these years, been acknowledged. Daniel's eyes softened as he looked at her, a smile breaking across his face that seemed both relieved and full of wonder. Emily, he said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of unspoken years. I've waited for this moment longer than I can remember. I don't want to waste another second without telling you what I've always felt. His words were simple, yet each one carried a depth of emotion that made Emily's heart swell. Tears sprang to Emily's eyes, hot and sudden, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, joy, and disbelief all mixed together. She had spent years believing she was too small, too quiet, too ordinary to matter to someone like Daniel. But standing here feeling the truth of his words, she realized that none of that had ever been true. She mattered to him. She had always mattered. And now, finally, he was showing her just how deeply. Daniel took a careful step closer, his hand still holding hers gently. You've always been perfect to me, Emily, he continued. Not because of your height, your appearance, or anything anyone else could see, but because of who you are. Your heart, your kindness, your courage, your laughter. You've always fit perfectly into my life, even when I didn't understand it myself. Emily felt her chest swell with emotion. She had never thought of herself as perfect, never thought of her smallness or quiet nature as anything special. But in Daniel's eyes, they had been her greatest strengths. Emily finally found her voice, trembling but clear. Daniel, I don't know what to say. I've always cared about you, but I never imagined. She paused, overwhelmed by the rush of emotions. He smiled softly, his thumb brushing gently across the back of her hand, and nodded for her to continue. You've always been in my heart, she whispered, her voice shaking. Even when we were apart, even when I tried to convince myself I didn't matter, I thought of you. I thought of us, and I never stopped hoping. Her words hung in the air, tender and fragile, yet full of truth. Daniel's eyes glistened with emotion, and he gently squeezed her hands. For a moment, the two of them simply stood there, looking at each other, absorbing the reality that had finally become their truth. It was a moment suspended in time, filled with recognition, understanding, and the kind of love that could not be measured by appearances or circumstances. Emily felt a warmth spread through her, a sense of finally being seen, fully and completely. Daniel leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice to a whisper meant only for her. When I said, you're too small, but I'll make it fit, I meant it in every way that matters. You fit into my life, my heart, and my future perfectly. Size does not matter when the heart knows its place. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine at the words. They were tender, intimate, and full of the kind of sincerity that could move mountains. She realized that what he had whispered at the altar had been a promise, a truth, and a declaration of love all at once. The guests began to notice the change, their whispers growing louder as they pieced together what had happened. Some looked shocked, others fascinated, and a few smiled knowingly, recognizing the authenticity of what was unfolding. But Emily felt detached from it all. She only noticed Daniel, the warmth of his presence, the certainty in his gaze, and the depth of the connection that had always existed between them. Emily took a deep breath and allowed herself to step closer, finally closing the distance that had separated them for so many years. Daniel's hands were warm and steady, holding her gently but firmly. She felt safe, cherished, and seen in a way she had never experienced before. Every doubt, every insecurity, every fear that had haunted her over the years seemed to melt away in that single, powerful moment. They walked together slowly through the hall, hand in hand as whispers of surprise and admiration followed them. Guests realized that the bride would not be marrying Daniel, but instead he had chosen Emily, the quiet, petite woman who had always been there, always cared, and had never given up hope. Emily's heart soared as she realized that her patience, her courage, and her presence had been recognized in the most extraordinary way possible. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow over the courtyard. Daniel and Emily stepped into the light together, the cool evening air brushing against their skin. They laughed softly, a mixture of relief, joy, and disbelief. Emily felt the weight of the past lift from her shoulders, replaced by a sense of freedom and possibility. The small, quiet girl who had once thought she was invisible now stood hand in hand with the man who had always loved her. Daniel turned to her, his eyes full of warmth and tenderness. Emily, I know this is sudden, and I know the world may seem uncertain right now, but I promise you this, I will always see you, love you, and choose you, no matter what. Emily felt tears spill again, but this time they were tears of pure happiness. She nodded, unable to speak, letting the depth of the moment fill her completely. They walked together into the courtyard, where a soft breeze carried the scent of flowers and the distant hum of the city. Emily realized that life had a strange and beautiful way of unfolding. She had spent years believing she was too small to matter, too quiet to be heard, too ordinary to be noticed. Yet here she was, standing with Daniel, who had finally recognized the truth she had always known in her heart. That love sees the soul, not the size, the heart, not appearances and timing, not circumstance. Daniel gently took her face in his hands, looking deeply into her eyes. "I've waited for this moment longer than I can say," he whispered. "And now that it's here, I know I will never let it go. You are my life, Emily. You always have been, and you always will be." Emily felt her heart swell beyond measure. She realized that her quiet courage, her smallness, and her persistence had led her to this exact moment. She had been patient, faithful to herself, and now her reward was the man who had always belonged to her heart. As the evening deepened, they found a quiet spot away from the crowd. The lights of the hall twinkled behind them like stars, and the soft rustle of leaves created a gentle, peaceful background. Daniel and Emily stood together, holding hands, their hearts beating in rhythm with each other. Emily felt a sense of completeness, of belonging, and of profound joy. She realized that life had brought them back together in a way that was both surprising and inevitable. A perfect fit that neither of them had fully understood until now. They talked quietly, sharing memories, laughter, and small confessions. Emily told him about her fears, her doubts, and the years she had spent wondering if she mattered. Daniel shared his own journey, the moments he had realized he could not love anyone else, and the slow awakening to the truth he had always known. Each word, each smile, each glance deepened their connection, weaving the past, present, and future into a tapestry of love and understanding. As the night grew darker, they walked hand in hand toward the garden outside the hall. The stars above twinkled gently, reflecting the warmth and glow in their hearts. Emily felt a sense of wonder and gratitude, realizing that all the waiting, all the quiet moments, and all the uncertainties had led her here. She was finally seen, finally chosen, and finally loved in the way she had always dreamed. Daniel stopped and looked at her, his eyes soft and full of certainty. "Emily, I want this to be our beginning, our life together, full of everything we have ever hoped for. You fit perfectly into my world, and I promise to spend every day proving it to you." Emily smiled through her tears, feeling a lightness and joy she had never known. She nodded, finally speaking the words that had been in her heart for so long. "I love you, Daniel. I always have." In that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The hall, the courtyard, the city around them, all faded away, leaving only Emily and Daniel, two hearts reunited and bound by a love that had endured time, distance, and uncertainty. They knew that life would continue with challenges and surprises, but they also knew that they would face it together, hand in hand, heart to heart. As they walked back toward the hall, ready to greet the guests and face the future, Emily realized something profound. Her smallness, her quiet nature, her patience and courage had all been part of what made this love possible. She had waited, had persisted, and had remained true to herself. And now, finally, she was living the love story she had always dreamed of, a story that had begun in childhood and had found its perfect, lasting place in the present.